Hello, my ever so crispy little things. Yes, I'm back. But I won't be staying this time, because this shit takes years to build. Fear not. This show is just getting started. And now, the commander of the Pact. Very talented. It's showtime.
Hello there. I am here to explain some important aspects of our farm trains that you should probably know about in order to get the most out of each run. Given our community's clear disdain for reading, which is so generously exemplified in our Discord channels each day, we have decided to present some information in a format that is both not quite so demanding for you, but also more memeable. If you're new to this community, welcome. A few points before I begin. Number 1. It's normal to be behind or lost in your initial run. We do move fast and it does take getting used to. Number 2. The goal values attached to our runs are values from this community's runs only. LFG runs do things differently and they have different results. Number 3. There are always run requirements. You can find them in each of the farm's Discord embeds. If you are new to the game, you want to check if you meet them. Number 4. We are a European community and play on the EU servers. Sadly, you aren't able to play with us if you are on another server. Number 5. If you want to ask something, it's probably already been answered. Check our website, the Discord channels, and use the search function in Discord. If your question is getting answers of dubious quality on Discord, you can be sure that the answer is already there and you should just look a bit harder. Actually, did you know that ANET has an in-game cinematic to help with this? If having Palawa Choco make mom jokes at your expense is somehow your thing, and I know you people are out there, check it out. Number 6. If you feel like someone is being a bitch to you in Discord, no hard feelings. This community is absolutely steeped in memes, and in fact so is this video, so don't take anything personally. People often forget themselves when talking to newcomers, so they just look like assholes. Or sometimes they're just British. Forgive them, they can't help it. Nearly all of our runs utilize voice chat on Discord, and most instructions are given there for the sake of efficiency. Downtime between these instructions is usually filled with highly intellectual discussions, if you know what I mean, so consider yourself warned. Joining voice for initial runs is, however, highly recommended, if not mandatory, if you want to keep up. With that out of our way, let's move on. I've already mentioned that we run for efficiency, which entails knowledge and utilization of several things, both game and player related. Hopefully, this video will help you understand how to make our time in the open world more enjoyable and profitable, so you don't have to go to Reddit and complain about metas that are long and exhausting, or similar shortcomings that stem from player inefficiency rather than design. But you don't need to worry, because surely you're not as prone to whinging instead of improving like the average Reddit user is, are you? Are you? In case you harbor such mentalities, please dispose of them over there in the garbage can, where they belong. The first thing I want to reflect on here is your gear and build. As we will be moving in squads, we want to ensure that for prolonged fights, as many people as possible, or ideally everyone, are performing their rotations and receiving adequate boons. Of course, boons and gear will do very little should you choose to adopt lemming strategies such as 1-1-1 or the good old scale the event while contributing absolutely nothing to the fight. This is why knowledge of your class and rotation is even more important than your gear. In accordance with our sacred tenet of efficiency, whose foundations were laid by our one and only Crowfather many moons ago, what matters is that tanky stuff dies fast and squishy stuff gets tagged by everyone. You may find builds for whatever class you play on our website as well. These are heavily based on builds made by the other Crows, who also have DPS rotations and videos laid out for you, which you are welcome to consult in order to see how to wreck shit in quick and satisfying ways. You can also check on their bird relatives if you so desire. On our website, you will find some minor adjustments that are better suited for gameplay in large squads in the open world, with explanations on why the builds are the way they are, and occasionally some specific benefits. All of this should help you move on from some gameplay styles that aren't as effective as they could be, and help you achieve something closer to this. But Commander, people say that anything works in the open world. Why should I bother? An excellent question, little Jimmy. Anything does work in the open world. But hear me out. You know that feeling you have when waiting ages for a bounty to die because it's being killed by 20 barebow rangers in blue nomads gear spamming longbow 1 while harnessing the immense potential of their full signet builds. And all this time your hair is going grey and you begin to wonder who has it worse, you, who must bear this soul-crushing endeavor for the next 10 minutes, or the boss, who has to continue to withstand the relentless squad of donkeys hitting him with damage equivalent to the impact of a paper bag until he eventually dies anyway. Some would dare say that going in and smiting that shit down in 30 seconds is a much better alternative, not to mention cathartic after the aforementioned torture, and indeed very possible should people prepare as they're supposed to. Time is money and you don't want to waste it. The next thing I will explain is champion scaling. If you take a look at any of our map event tables on the website, you will notice a champions category that's either marked with an X, says scaled, or claims that a number of champions are guaranteed. This refers to the way that the game handles events to accommodate the number of players completing them. An X indicates the event will never spawn champions under any circumstance. Scaled means they can appear if conditions are right, and guaranteed means, obviously, that the specified amount of champions will appear no matter what. An event can scale the mobs it spawns in level, amount, and hierarchy. The game amps up levels, mob number, and rank as the number of players nearby grows. Hierarchy scaling determines whether mobs will spawn as regular enemies, veterans, elites, or champions. When a sufficient amount of players is present, at least about 15 to 20, with 30 to 35 being much more reliable, scaled events will spawn champion mobs, which are high-value targets due to the fact that they drop champion bags. This is why you will hear commanders call for you not to attack on some very brief events with spawns dictated by event progression, such as forged raiding parties. This is also why you might see squad members conversing with you through unsavory vocabulary should you get carried away, contrary to the commander's calls. Each faction and mob type has its own champion bag, the values of which you can find on our website as well. Every event, save for select meta event chains, has a champion cap, after which champion spawns will be disabled entirely, and that cap is 5. If 5 champions spawn within the scope of the same event, whether that happens during one run of the event, or you get, for example, 3 the first time you do it and 2 the second time you do it, it isn't possible to get any more during further reruns of the event. That event is then considered depleted on that specific map IP. We don't know when or if this cap wears off, but from our experience you are more likely to see the next expansion released before the goddamn caps reset on a single map IP. So usually, when we hit the champion cap on an event we repeat frequently, we search for another IP of the same map on the LFG, because each IP has its own champion cap. Scaling does not work the same across all areas of the game. For example, in Heart of Thorns you can tromp around with any amount of players above the minimum requirement for champion spawns and expect to get champion mobs, along with more enemies to kill for loot in general. Well, that seems like a logical way to maintain enemies as some semblance of a threat, while also providing greater rewards for playing this MMO in a big group, you might think. But you better be prepared to abandon all sanity, because that shit is turned upside down in Path of Fire. For whatever unholy reason, scaling only works as you would expect it up to about 35 to 40 players. Past this point, the game lowers the cap on hierarchy scaling, meaning you can't get champions, and drastically increases the scaling on levels. This means that engaging scaled events with a full squad would result in a large amount of level 84 regulars, veterans and elites, but not champions. As regular drops from Awakened and Forged are fairly worthless, save for awakened weapons, you now get to kill mobs for twice the amount of time, but for the same amount of trash loot. How fortunate that these two factions form 70% of enemies in the entirety of the expansion. To compound this excellent piece of design, specific mob types can botch champion spawns even if the conditions are right for one to appear. For example, a champion variant of the Forged Forerunner or Warhound simply doesn't exist in the game outside of bounties, so if the game chooses to spawn those mobs as part of the enemy's composition,
Fuck you.
because they will appear as elites at best, whereas if it shows a forage, sharpshooter, scavenger, war mage, etc., you would have gotten a champion. This is down to pure RNG. What fun! Whether the game will take a player into consideration for event scaling or not depends on their proximity to the event. Event radiuses, however, aren't the most consistent thing, so we tend to enforce stacking on certain positions or on NPCs to ensure maximum scaling. Always listen for the commander stacking calls. The positions are usually marked with an arrow. Another great boon to our farm trains is NPC boosting, which can help significantly speed them up depending on the map and friendly mobs. It refers to granting NPCs an escort event swiftness, or better yet super speed, to speed the event's progression along and bring it to completion sooner. The consistency of NPC behavior with super speed, however, is similar to the consistency of world versus world updates. Sometimes the effect is completely marginal but sort of there, sometimes it's ridiculous and beyond any expectations.
Deja vu, I just been in this place before.
And on some occasions, nothing happens at all. Unlike World vs. World updates, however, the effects of NPC super speed actually exist most of the time. In addition to the mentioned situations, there are NPCs who are completely immune to receiving boons, and also NPC groups that will only speed up if the majority of the NPCs in their party receive the boost. If someone in the squad is boosting, you need to stay away from the NPCs and that player's effect radius. This is because boons always prioritize actual players over NPCs, so if you are nearby, you'll be stealing them from the NPCs and stall the event. Several classes are able to provide super speed to NPCs, but the most effective by far is the engineer. Both Hollowsmiths and Scrappers can provide infinite super speed uptime on NPCs, with Scrappers maintaining it more easily on multiple targets. Hollowsmiths need only trait crystal configuration Zephyr and spam Hololeap in front of NPCs, so they walk over the buff area and continue to gain super speed indefinitely. This is a much better alternative to any other source of super speed when the squad is stacking tightly around an escort or is constantly moving over it, as the number of targets that can receive the boon by walking over the hollow field is infinite, as opposed to the usual cap of 5 allied targets. If you're a Scrapper, you need to trade gyroscopic acceleration and alternate your gyros, you can pick whichever ones you want, roughly every 4 seconds around the NPCs. Other specializations that can boost NPCs with super speed include Heralds with Chaotic Release, Tempests with Eye of the Storm, or Druids traded with Celestial Shadow. I would like to stress, however, that you should only use Herald, Scrapper, or Druid for NPC boosting, and switch to Hollowsmith, Renegade, and Soul Beast for fights immediately upon encountering the spawn or boss, as the former 3 are a burden both on your personal tagging potential and squad efficiency in open world situations. If you enter combat before switching, you will possess the offensive capabilities of a wet noodle, so turn around and run as far as you need to get out of combat and switch to your other specialization. Lastly, I will briefly mention light tagging, or gentle tagging as we call it, which is used on farm trains that have events with lackluster scaling or those that include roaming around areas rich with mobs that aren't part of any events and are thus unscaled. Because of this, these mobs are extremely squishy and easily overwhelmed, which requires careful damage from the squad in order for everyone to get participation on their kills. When a commander calls for light tagging, you are supposed to tag only with 1, maybe 2 ranged auto attacks, light hitting AoEs, and you are not allowed to use mount engage skills. Consistently dealing too much damage in these situations not only makes you a cunt, but hampers your own efficiency, as you're spending too much time on one mob while the next one is already dying. That about does it for the introductory guide to our community and farm trains. Hopefully you've learned some things along the way and you'll have a good time with us. And, as my grandma always used to say, don't be a donkey, or a German crow will find you, call you a loser, and peck your eyeballs out. See you in the farm trains.